All right, everyone, thanks for having me. I know this is a tricky one because it's lunchtime, so probably some of you are either eating your lunch or you're thinking about going to lunch. Well, I can guarantee you that this is going to be a good one because I've given this presentation a few times before and I've always been flooded with questions at the end just because there's a lot of uh, internal data that we're showing for the first time. And I think we've tried to make this as actionable as possible to help people respond to all the craziness that's happening in 2020. So let's just jump into it. Real quick, this is who I am. My name is David Fallarme. I work for a company called HubSpot that does marketing and sales software, and I look after their Asia business. So the data that you're going to see in this presentation is from our Asia customers. And how we got this data is actually pretty interesting because I think most of us in this room who are marketing and or sales folks probably can relate to this setup where your company probably has email software sitting in one place. We have blog software sitting in one place, your CRM is in another place, then you have Google Analytics. And so if you have a situation like this, you aren't able to connect all the different pieces. And because we have HubSpot, where everything is in one place, what we've been able to do is look at our Asia customer data. We can look at what's happening from the marketing side. We can take a look at what's happening in the trends in the sales side and in the customer service side. And from there, we can actually zoom out and understand how is customer behavior changing? And if customer behavior is changing, that means as business owners, as marketing leaders, as sales leaders, we also need to change. So this presentation is all about thinking about the different trends that are happening because of the pandemic and all the other crazy stuff happening in 2020, and therefore what we need to do. All right, first set of data we're gonna look at is, again, buyer behavior and thinking about what this new normal is going to look like for everyone. All the data you're gonna see is this time compared against pre-COVID benchmarks. And if you think about that, what we're seeing here is that website traffic is at an all-time high. Website traffic is at an all-time high, which kind of makes sense if you think about it, because during quarantines and lockdowns, people couldn't go outside or businesses were closed. And so we saw all these people going online to either buy things or to get more information about products or services or what was changing for their favorite companies. So website traffic is an all-time high, but on the flip side, deals created or sales deals did not have an all-time high. It was actually pretty bumpy throughout the first half of the year, which again, sort of makes sense because businesses were going, some businesses were not doing well. Customers had fewer budgets and they didn't know what was going to happen to their jobs. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and that's reflected in this chart that we can see here. So as a marketer, as a sales leader, as a business owner, what does this mean for you? Well, if you think about this previous data, website traffic is at an all-time high, but sales data did not follow. Okay, what is the connection between these two things? We think that since buyer behavior has changed and more people are now using websites for information, buying more things online, the businesses that were set up to have a strong online presence in the first half of 2020 had a huge advantage, right? Especially as we look at the end of this chart where things are actually starting to recover, and hopefully, knock on wood, praying to everything that it continues to improve in terms of economy. All right. So what does this mean for you as a business leader? The first shift is thinking about an inbound strategy as your competitive advantage. So all those businesses that had a strong online presence, had a strong inbound strategy, were in a position to take advantage of how buyer behavior was changing. And we saw that in the first chart. Okay, so this first shift is one of the first two things you need to do to thrive in the new normal. And we'll get into how exactly to do that and what that looks like for different kinds of businesses. Okay, so new normal, quick recap, buyers are online more than ever before. And I don't think that this is a trend that's going to stop given what's going on all around the world in different markets in Asia. And because people are forced to go to websites, people are forced to be online, people are making more decisions with a lot more homework. They're more conservative in their buying process. They need to know a lot more. They want to ask a lot more questions. They need to know and feel really secure about any purchase they make, whether that's B2C or B2B. So that's one of the things we're seeing in the new normal. All right. So inbound businesses, they're the ones that have an advantage in the new normal. We think about inbound breaking across three different parts of every business. So whether it means you're attracting new prospects and leads or new customers to your website, whether it means you're engaging with people who are engaging with your sales team. So they already know about you, but you're engaged with them. If you're an inbound business, this is what that looks like. And if you are thinking about delighting customers, how can you help make sure that your online presence actually allows you to do that? Okay, so what we're gonna do is we'll take a look at each step. That way, depending on where you think you need to strengthen your business, you'll have some examples that you can take after this presentation, right? So setting up an inbound business is important because everybody's moving online. How can you build more trust with prospects and leads? How can you attract more people into your ecosystem? Here's an example that what we do at HubSpot, and it's one of the reasons I'm talking to you about this topic right now. So we know that people are more conservative. They want to do more research. They want to get to know the companies they're going to do business with. So we recognize this early on because we have this data. And we released a education series called Adapt 2020 of thinking about how to adapt to the craziness of this year. We run webinars on how businesses can adapt to the new abnormal. We're chatting right now about this topic. And then if you know anything about HubSpot or if you've looked us up before, you know we just have a ton of resources and helpful content around how business owners and marketers and sales leaders can improve their business. So we just really want to attract by building trust, and that allows us to build traffic as well, regardless of what economic situation is happening. And we see that the businesses that do this have a huge benefit. So we saw that when we were being as helpful as possible, when we were helping people self-educate, and we knew that they were a bit more conservative in their purchase decisions, we were just being as helpful as we could, and we actually saw increased engagement with our marketing emails, and we saw a huge increase in our blog traffic. So all the businesses that had a healthy blog, all the businesses that had a strong email strategy, they benefited from what was going on because they had that infrastructure, they had that foundation that they could build on. And one thing here that you might be thinking about as you're listening to me is, wait, does this mean I need to go create like 50 blog posts per week? Does this mean I need to write all these new emails? That's not necessarily the case. And even us, we didn't do that at all, because one of the things we noticed is that work from home, offices are closed, so people had to do more and more remote work. We had a ton of content around remote work, and instead of writing new stuff about what's happening in the different markets around Asia, we just gathered all of our content around this topic that everybody's now looking for and made sure that it was easy to find. And we found that traffic increased, more people engaged with this content. And it's not always about creating new content. Sometimes you already have a lot of good stuff, but it's just surfacing and highlighting that to people who are needing help and needing more confidence in their buying decision. Here's a company from a HubSpot customer who's a market research company in Malaysia. And they did this exact same thing. So it's not just about HubSpot doing it. They realized that as things started breaking out in Malaysia, people wanted to understand how consumer behavior was changing. And so since they're in market research, they started surveying Malaysian consumers, what's happening, how can we add value, how can we make sure that we're educating people. And what they noticed was people engaged more with their emails. They got more requests for information about their product, and media was more responsive to their pitches. So whenever they wanted to get some press coverage for some surveys that they ran, they were able to do that much more easily, since they were leading with this idea of, I want to build trust with people, I want to be as helpful as possible. So that's an example of a company doing it that's not necessarily selling software or in tech. Okay, so that's how to pull people more into your business using inbound, building trust and making sure you're as helpful as possible. Let's think about if you're a business that has a sales team and you want to make sure that your sales team is as supported as possible during this time, right? So those businesses that are providing value before asking for value, they're the ones who are able to see themselves through and make themselves more resilient, even through a pandemic and whatever crazy changes are happening in 2020. Here's an example of what we do at HubSpot. Knowing that we have this data where we saw that website traffic was up, but people were not buying at the same rate as the website traffic because people's buyer purchase decisions were a bit more conservative. And so we created this campaign called Customers of HubSpot Asia, which is HubSpot customers talking about their experience joining the HubSpot ecosystem and coming onto our platform and then just talking about what the different ways we were able to help them. So again, knowing that people are more conservative these days, how can you reduce the risk of them wanting to buy from you? So for us, what this meant was, let's get customers on video talking about how we help them transition from their CRM to HubSpot, transition their blog from WordPress to HubSpot. But just take a second and think about what this could mean for you. So if you're a business where your sales team is, making those phone calls, but people are not picking up the phone, or they're really not ready to buy, how can you use inbound and thinking about reducing the risk and providing value for your customers? That way, knowing that they're more conservative in their buying process, then you can support them and make them feel like there's social proof around your solution. Okay. And finally, thinking about not just the new people in your business or the people who you are involved in an active sales conversation, but your existing customers. How can you use the idea of building trust, providing value, and making sure that your customers are actually being successful and you're helping them? So something we did within HubSpot is recognizing that people are wanting a bit more guidance during this period. We set up this community where people who are already within the HubSpot community can share best practices around COVID-19, what they're doing. This one is about working from home. There's also some cases around how did you think about your blog traffic, so people can really help each other. And think about this from your case. Is there a way you can connect customers to each other? Would they find value from that? Can you create a webinar or a meetup for customers of your platform or your product to see if they can help each other and therefore also see you as somebody who's adding value to their business? All right, so just a quick zoom out here, looking at the data that we have and trying to understand what this means in a new normal. Is because of working from home, because of quarantine, because of lockdown, buyers are online more than before. And we think this is a behavior that's not going away. In fact, it's here to stay. And since there's more buyers online, since there's more time spent on the internet researching, we see that buyers are doing more homework before making decisions. We see that they're a bit more conservative in their buying process. So as a business leader, as a marketer, as a sales owner, here's what you need to be doing. Increasing your online footprint, because more people are now online and they want to visit websites for information. And then when you're thinking about how do you make sure that your business is still running here, of those three things, attracting new people to your business, engaging with your current sales conversations, and then delighting your customers, which part of that do you feel like you don't have enough content for? Do you feel like you need, is the biggest issue in your business, you want to attract more people, but you don't have enough online footprint? And so therefore you need to create more blog posts, you need to create more social posts. Is the issue in your business that there's enough leads and there's enough traffic, but those people are not converting into sales? So in that case, how can you provide value before you're asking them to buy? How can you reduce the risk? How can you increase the social proof of your solution? And in the case of maybe your customers want to feel more supported, is there a way you can connect them? Is there a way you can help them self-educate? Does it mean that if you want to help them help themselves, having more helpful content, self-serve support content, that sort of thing? So making sure that you know where the gaps in your business are and using content to plug those gaps. All right, cool. So second set of data is thinking more specifically about sales and how prospects and customers' behavior has changed. So we talked a lot about the data from website traffic and sales deals. And this one zooms into that just a little bit. So here's one around marketers in Asia. So we have this data because we have an email tool in HubSpot and we have a lot of customers in Asia, so we can see these trends at an Asia-wide level as well. And interestingly here, so you'll notice when COVID and the pandemic started breaking out, there was a huge flux of emails being sent. And this is going to sound familiar to a lot of people because I think we're mostly marketers in this room. It's like, here's what we're doing about COVID. Here's what's happening to our business. Here's our plan for dealing with this or changing pricing and things like that. So we were sending a lot of emails as a marketing industry. And interestingly, people were responding to them. People wanted to know. So this is the response rate. So clicks, opens, people were willing to be educated and wanting to know what was happening to the businesses that they patronized, wanting to understand how you were dealing with all the changes in the economy. So this was a surprise to me because I thought that, hey, so many emails being sent out. uh, nobody is going to open these emails because it's all saying the same stuff. But interestingly, marketers sent a lot of emails, and consumers responded by opening those emails and engaging with them. So from the marketing side, lots of stuff going into people's inboxes and people opening them. On the sales side, it's the flip side. Sales teams are sending emails because for the salespeople on the call or watching this recording, your target probably didn't go away, your quota didn't go down, and so you still need to hit your number, but people are not opening emails. So this is what we see here. Sales folks were still sending emails and wanting to engage with their prospects and customers and trying to see where the opportunity was. But as you would expect, and similar to the first set of data that I showed, buyers became more conservative. They wanted to do more research. Maybe they were personally affected by the pandemic, or their businesses needed to cut spending. So we didn't see the same type of response with in inboxes as we did with marketers. So sales teams had a tougher time when they were sending sales emails. Okay, that brings us to the second shift we need to make as an industry, which is relevance. So right time, right message becomes more important than ever before. I think it was always important to try to send the right message at the right time. But in the age of COVID, in a post-pandemic world, this becomes even more important and becomes a new competitive area and a source of advantage for companies who can get this right. So that's what we'll talk about. In the new normal, what happens is, marketers are sending more emails, as we saw, and salespeople are also sending emails. So what that means is everybody is trying to get into these inboxes that are extremely crowded. And so the relevance bar is going to increase. And if you're a salesperson, you have to do more to stand out. That's what the data is telling us. And businesses who internalize this and can adapt and make changes to their go-to-market strategy are going to have an advantage versus those who don't. So we'll talk about how to do this. From a marketing side, we'll talk about a solution. And then from the sales side, I'll talk about what our sales team has done, including some examples, so you guys can take that as you adapt your businesses. Okay, so first on the marketing side. I'm guessing that most people watching this have an email database where you send EDMs, you send email marketing campaigns. I think most companies in a pre-pandemic world were like this, where it's like, hey, we're just gonna send emails whenever we need to sell more, or we need to generate more clicks. And what happens there is you're killing your list because you're just extracting value as much as you can. But if you have marketing automation, what that really means is you're able to be a bit smarter around how you're communicating to your database. Okay, so here's how to do that. And you can use any tool here. I'm going to show some HubSpot examples, but really you can do this across a variety of platforms. So we'll talk about increasing relevance and right time, right message, using marketing automation as our way to do that when we think about sending emails. So the first step, which is crucially important, especially in a time when pandemic is affecting a lot of different businesses, is segmenting your leads. So all this means is that you have a giant database now, or I hope it's giant, even if it's not giant, you have a database now. And not everybody in that database is affected by the pandemic in the same way. Okay, not everybody in the database is affected by the pandemic in the same way. What we found was there's actually some segments that are thriving in the pandemic, which is a very strange thing to say, but because everybody's working from home, because we have to do remote work. I mean, we're doing this thing on Zoom right now. Zoom is one such example of a company that is growing through the pandemic, has benefited from the pandemic. E-signature services like DocuSign, they've grown. If you have noticed that you're working from home a lot and your back hurts, you're probably in the market for a new office chair. So office chair companies and office furniture companies that can deliver to homes have actually done very well here. So it's the same thing for your database. Not everybody is going to respond to we know times are hard, we know times are bad for you, because for some businesses, times are very good and your message therefore needs to reflect that. But so industry-based segmenting is one thing you need to do in database. You can think about the different types of buyers that are in your audience. Is it decision makers? Is it people who are using the product? And so segmenting your database is the most important step. Who exactly is in your database, and how can you find ways to split them up so that the messages you send them are more relevant? All right, so the first thing, segment your leads. And after that, actually everything kind of falls into place, because then it's just a matter of thinking about, okay, I have these segments. So let's just take the office chair example. What kind of content is going to be relevant to them? I should not send them a times are tough, we know you're having a hard time. That message is not going to resonate with them. Instead, it's here's how we can support your growth. You are needing more support for this part of your business. Here's how we can help, right? So showing them the right content. Or maybe it's people who are visiting your pricing page a certain amount of times, people who are visiting certain types of product feature pages on your website. So what can you send them that's going to be more relevant, right? And the way we do that with marketing automation tools is workflows. So you might also hear these called like automated nurture campaigns. But in any case, what you're doing is you're taking the segmented leads that you started with, and then you're building some automated email campaigns to make sure you're serving them in a relevant way. So here's an example from the first section. We talked about remote work. So we had all this content around remote work. Then what we did was we didn't send them an email that said, thank you for downloading this remote work ebook, talk to HubSpot sales, and we will show you how no, like that's totally inappropriate because we don't even know if these people are interested in our product, and we don't want to turn them off, especially since we don't know what it's like for the company. So what we did was instead, here's your ebook about remote work. Then sometime later, we sent them something that was a little more related to businesses. And then sometime later, we sent them a case study that could be related to them. And only after that, if they were engaging with us, if we still thought that they were interested, would we send a request a demo, get on the phone with one of our sales team. That way, our messaging is a bit more appropriate to what's going on. If they didn't open any of these emails, then we would not have sent them the sales request, which is just a better experience for everyone. Right time, right message. All right. So you have your segmented leads. You're making sure you're showing them the right content, and then you're sending them information that's more appropriate to them. One thing you can do that's going to be very helpful for anyone with a sales team is triggers. So this is kind of like digital body language. And this is one of the most powerful things that we do within HubSpot. So if we find that you visited our blog at some point and you downloaded an ebook or you attended a webinar, if we then notice that you visited our pricing page like 20 times in one day, then we can send an automated notification to our sales team that says, hey, this person downloaded this ebook and then they visited the pricing page like 20 times. You better call them right now. So that's going to be a really good experience because it's really the right time. It's somebody who is clearly doing some research on pricing and maybe playing around with the different levers on our pricing page to see what their final cost is going to be like. So that allows us to send them an email or maybe even a phone call from a sales rep who's like, hey, I noticed that you downloaded this ebook and then you're probably looking at pricing. Your business is in this industry. Let's talk about how we can tailor a solution to you. So that allows you to do right time and right message, which, as we talked about, relevance being the new battleground for a lot of businesses. And this allows you to stand out as opposed to another company who's maybe just sending the same emails to everyone. All right. And the last thing about marketing automation is measuring results. So you have all these different nurturing campaigns going off. Which ones are actually working and which ones aren't? Because if there's certain automated nurturing campaigns that are getting really poor open rates, getting poor click rates, and nobody's interacting with your sales team, then you probably want to turn that off, or at least you want to optimize and tweak. That way it's a better experience for the people who are receiving it. Cool, so that was a crash course in marketing automation. Probably just saved everyone from downloading a ton of ebooks and reading a bunch of blog posts about marketing automation. That's really all it takes. But the companies that do these simple 4 steps have a huge advantage over those who are just doing the same old stuff. Okay, so I said I would talk about the marketing side and then the sales side. But before I do the sales side, let me just quickly recap why this is so important, the idea of relevance. It's because email marketing overload is going to increase the bar for what gets responded to. And then if you're a sales rep or you're managing a sales team, inboxes are noisier, so you have to do more to stand out. The reason it's more competitive is because a lot of sales reps who are maybe visiting the clients or going to conferences, going to events, those outside sales folks, they're now inside sales. Like most people are now inside sales, and there's nobody going door to door. There's nobody attending trade shows. It's all on Zoom. It's all on email. So you have to stand out to compete. We think about this at HubSpot as reinventing your outreach. And I'll give you some examples here. But the main thing is you have to change because there's no choice. Everybody has to change. And if you don't change, then you'll be left behind. We talked a little bit about how different audiences are affected differently by the pandemic. And so that should mean something around the prospects that you go after. And then information really being your huge advantage. So I'll give you some examples of that. Okay, first up, here's an example of something we do at HubSpot, which I think is something that's completely underused by everybody else. So most people are just sending emails. So, hey, buy my stuff. Hey, book a demo with my sales rep. Here's something that we can do to help your company. They're just sending emails. What we've done at HubSpot is notice that we can actually add videos inside emails. And so instead of a prospect opening an email and it's just being a paragraph of text, we can insert a thumbnail of us like talking in a video, which gets a lot higher response rate because it's unique, it's novel, it stands out. Because how many people are sending emails with video thumbnails that are personalized to the person? So this is a screenshot of something that we use called Vidyard. It's integrated with HubSpot, so we record the video and then it just automatically inserts to our thumbnails. Our sales reps really love this and they see a great response. So that's one example of how you can change your outreach to be more competitive. This one is a lot of text, but all it's saying is, if you look at this part, this is some thought around the highly impacted industries because of COVID: travel and tourism, food service. And so if you're gonna reach out to these folks, then your email needs to be a bit different versus companies that are less impacted, or maybe even in some cases thriving. The point here is every audience is affected differently. Companies are affected differently. And so you need to change your outreach to make sure that you're getting the highest response possible for your sales team. Here are some other tools that we use to make sure that we are as relevant as possible in our outreach. On the left side is Gong, which is a tool that allows us to analyze the sales conversations our sales reps are having with prospects. So it transcribes all of the sales conversations that our sales teams have and then picks out patterns to see, okay, this sales rep is doing really, really well. What is he or she doing? So let's analyze the words that they use. Let's analyze the conversations they're having with prospects. And so as a sales manager, you can see, hey, sales rep A is outperforming sales rep B by a huge margin. What are these two people doing differently? And it allows us to make sure that our conversations with prospects are super relevant. And on the right side is Slack, or you can use Microsoft Teams or even Skype. Basically, this means that we're trading notes between different sales teams. Say, hey, if I talk to a tech company, here's a talk track that really works. Here's a positioning that really works. Making sure that we're trading learnings across each other to make sure that we're learning together. That way, when we reach out to prospects, they have a much better impression of HubSpot and they're more willing to engage with us. All right. So in the new normal, again, email marketing is going to increase the bar for relevance. How do you make sure you stand out? Especially as a sales rep's inboxes are noisier. So how do you adapt? And our way of thinking about this is automation from a marketing perspective is your solution. It's your way to make sure that everything you're sending still gets opened, still gets clicked. And as a sales rep, your advantage is information and all those, and some of those tools that I highlighted, because that's what's going to give you a huge competitive advantage. Okay, I'm going to wrap up here with some data, because whenever I give this presentation, some people are like, oh, this doesn't apply to my business because XYZ, or I don't think this is going to be applicable to me. And I mentioned HubSpot has a bunch of tools, and one of those tools is a live chat tool. And here's what we see. So this is across Asia, where chat conversations are at an all-time high, where people who prospects normally who would have maybe called you on the phone to get information or gone into your office to talk to an account manager or a sales manager, they're now taking all of those conversations and either doing them on your website, which is why we saw that all-time high in website traffic, or they're engaging with your live chat on your website. So chat conversations are an all-time high, and we're seeing a shift in behavior because all these people who their first habit would have been to call you on the phone or go into your store or go into your business, now their behavior is like, hey, I can actually get that information on the website, or I can get that information on live chat. So this is a behavior that's not going away. So how do you set yourself up for success in this new world where people are now wanting to get more information online, whether that's through chat or from a website? And ending on a promising note, countries are starting to stabilize. So again, knocking on wood and praying to everything that this continues to stay the way it is through everything that's going to happen in the rest of 2020. Countries are beginning to stabilize, hopefully. Economies are starting to find their footing. And so now there's this huge cohort of customers whose behavior was shifted, whose behavior was changed in the first half of 2020. They're now going back into the market with budgets. They're going back into the markets with new habits. So how do you make sure that you're one of those businesses that stand out, that can take advantage of these new buyers coming back into the market with new buyer behavior? And so something for you to think about as you consider how to change and adapt to the post-pandemic economy. All right, quick recap before we maybe take questions, if there's questions. First, one of the two things you have to do to thrive in the new economy is set up an inbound strategy, increase your online footprint. How do you make sure you're adding value, knowing that buyers are a bit more conservative now? And the second shift is increase relevance. So whether that means adding marketing automation to your skill set, or whether it means arming your sales reps with tools and information to make sure that their outreach stands out above the competition, those two things are going to be extremely important as we think about going into the rest of the year. All right, if you want to get more information around what I just saw, most of this was based on our campaign called Adapt 2020. So just Google that and you'll find all our resources on that. And if you want to find out more about HubSpot, just Google HubSpot and you'll find all the good stuff that we do. And if you want to connect with me, this is my name on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to connect with you there and chat with you guys if you have any questions. Other than that, we will stop here and I'll take any questions if you all have any questions. I'm not sure where my MC friend went, but I'm still here. But I will attempt to take these questions in the Q&A. All right, how to convert cold leads to warm leads. So one of the things that I mentioned was marketing automation. So you have a bunch of leads in your database where people are, maybe they downloaded something from you, or they signed up for blog updates. And so they're a cold lead, you can think of it that way. They can become a warm lead if you set up an email nurture campaign or an email sequence that says, hey, thank you for downloading this ebook, or thank you for visiting our blog. Now check out this next piece of content. Check out this website, check out this video that we made. And then through that process, you can warm them up. And then if you have a CRM, or if you have maybe a sales team that can take those calls, then that way you can take that conversation further. Cool, hopefully that was useful. Feel free to ask again if you have another follow-up. Another question was suggestions for business owners to improve business revenue in this new normal. Which email automation flow would you recommend? So this, I would say, is highly dependent on your business. Which email automation flow I would recommend, I think is going back to those 4 things that I highlighted. Maybe I'll just share my screen again so I can go back to that. But basically those 4 steps, right? When you think about marketing automation, that way you know which email flow it's about. So segmenting your leads. Let me just skip to this. Right? So this is how you know which email automation flow to set up. First, you segment your leads because you don't know the different kinds of audience you have, because there could be some people who are in industry A and industry B in your email. And so you want to make sure that your automation matches what they're looking for. So that's the first step. After that, you show them the right content. So for industry A, maybe it's content around, hey, here's how my company is helping industry A grow or survive through the pandemic. I mean, industry B, it's here's 3 features that you're going to love about our product, right? So it's about making sure that they are relevant to the audience that you have. Most popular email sequences, and I'm new to this, yeah, no problem. So most popular, I would say the most common is because if you have an email sequence, you probably have an email database. Well, how did you get that email database? It's probably because you have a blog. So the most popular email sequence is, here's our blog. Okay, you downloaded an ebook or you signed up for our updates. A popular email sequence is just every week we send you our newest blog posts. The whole point of any email sequence is just to keep yourself familiar with the prospect and make sure that you're top of mind whenever there's a problem that you can help them solve. So that's the very basic, to send them something every week. If you want to get a bit more advanced than that, then this is where the automation 4 steps comes in. Segment your leads, who's in your database, make sure you know the different kinds of audiences. And now that you know the different kinds of audiences, send them the content that's relevant. As a marketer, which type of data do I need to refer with? It depends what you're trying to achieve. I would say that if you're, for example, a B2B business, if you are building a website that's on top of a CRM or on type of some kind of analytics tool, then you want to know what kinds of people are visiting your sales contact page, your demo page, your pricing page. Then trying to identify what those people look like so you can get more of them. So I think you're thinking about your different conversion points, thinking about how the conversion funnel for each of those conversion points, and just better understanding that, that would be a starting point. So what is your high value web page? And then understanding how people get to that page. If you have more specifics, I can better help, but that's a general answer. Starting with the high value conversion point and understanding the funnel, working backwards from that. Explain the part about triggers for marketing automation. Yeah, sure. So triggers is this, where I talked about how within HubSpot, what our sales teams loves is whenever there's a prospect that visits the sales page, let's call it 20 times in one day, that's probably a prospect that is ready to buy and has a lot of questions and is very interested in HubSpot, okay? So the trigger we've set up is if this contact has visited this URL and they've visited it X amount of times, when that happens, send a notification to our sales rep. So this is a marketing automation flow we've set up within HubSpot. You could do this within any automation tool. This is what it looks like within HubSpot. So if person has visited X page, then notify this person. So that's all it is.
All right. Hey, David, can you hear me?
Yep.
All right, so sorry about that. I've been trying for the last 5 minutes to get my camera and audio on, but apparently it seems that there's something wrong with my webcam, so I think this will have to suffice for now. And thanks for filling in about further questions. Sorry about that as well.
No worries.
Yeah, so I think you guys, we're going to give you a couple more seconds to fill in maybe 1 or 2 more questions, but I think we have one more that just came in from Amanda Chong. The question is, you said weekly. I'm sending emailers every month. Is that too little?
Yeah, so again, it depends on every business. Everyone's different. Every month could be appropriate. So let's just say that you're selling to, I don't know, enterprise customers. Maybe they don't want to open your emails every week. It depends. There's no right or wrong answer to that. If you really want to have a more concrete answer, then you can test it. So if you start sending emails weekly, but you notice that the engagement on those emails is going down, people are opening them less, they're clicking them less versus sending them monthly, then that would be an indicator. But there's no right or wrong. So we have some customers that send emails every quarter, and that works perfectly fine for them. It really depends on your business. And at the end of the day, solve for what the prospect wants, solve for what the customer wants. Think about the customer experience, and that typically thinking backwards from that is going to get you to the right answer.
All right, fantastic. David, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us here at Singapore Marketing Fest and for also closing our event. I'm so sorry that I can't be on screen right now with you to thank you. And I also have to apologize for butchering your surname earlier. I realized I didn't pronounce it correctly.
Oh, good. No, it was far from the worst one. So I think you did a good job.
But just for my sake, how to pronounce your surname again?
Okay, if you are wanting to make it 100% authentic, it's Fallarme because it's a Filipino Spanish name, but I just go for Fallarme because it's simplest. Fallarme, let's go with Fallarme.
Fallarme. All right, I'll remember that from now on. But thank you so much for joining us here at Singapore Marketing Fest 2020. I hope to see you off properly the next time. I'm so sorry that this is the goodbye I have to give you for now, but thank you so much for all your input, and we'll see you again soon.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right, bye.
Exabytes. Grow your business online.